Dior Homme Parfum 2024, also known as Dior Homme Parfum 2025. First of all, I have to say this is not a review. It's not even a first impression. I've been wearing this for the past week already, so I already know what it smells like. I've tested it out a few times now. Actually, I'm wearing it today. There's a department store in my city that has a tester, but you got to ask them at the Dior kiosk in the department store, and they go in the back and they pull it out and you get to wear it. They have no bottles to sell, actually, but you can actually go onto Dior's website here in Australia and order it, which is what I've done, and my box arrived today. And inside this box also there's a few samples. A couple of them are also samples, carded samples of Dior Homme Parfum, and Dior do this to let you sample the fragrance just in case you don't like it. That means you can actually send them the unopened bottle back and perhaps get your money back. It is considerate, but it doesn't really fill me with a lot of confidence. Also, it's a nice way to get free samples if you're a cheapskate. So Dior allow you to buy it online, but not in store. Why is that? Well, I'll get to that a little bit later on in the video, so keep watching to find out why. Also in this video, I'm going to break down the entire Dior Homme lineup, the Dior Homme concept. I'll address the uproar against this fragrance. I'll take you through how ridiculous it sounds to make comparisons of Dior Homme Parfum to similar smelling fragrances from other designer houses, and basically prove everyone is wrong about this fragrance. And I'll also prove that even if you agree with me, you're still wrong. Now, before I start, I have to preface this video. All opinions are my own, even though they're fact. You can disagree. I mean, everybody's got to be wrong sometimes, right? Except for me. My thoughts on this fragrance might hurt some people's feelings. It might make some people angry. It might even make some people cry like they've lost a loved one. And if you're one of those people, I'm sorry, but you're not the Dior Homme. So who is the Dior Homme? Sure, let's break this down. In 2005, in the height of the metrosexual era, when men were getting in touch with their feminine side or some shit like that, Dior released Dior Homme. This one with the silver stem going through the bottle. And here it says Homme. Now, Dior is not English, and Homme does not mean house in this case. We're not talking about Dior's house. Homme is French for man. So this is literally Dior man. The advertisement for this fragrance portrayed a 23-year-old Jamie Dornan, who's an Irish actor and model, most notably known for the 50 Shades of Grey movie. But in 2004, he was a top international model. A close look at the print ad shows that the Dior Homme in 2005 was young, but not too young, sometimes naked. And when he wasn't naked, he wore a crisp Dior suit. He wasn't muscle-bound. He didn't have overtly masculine features. But at the same time, he wasn't androgynous. He was clearly still a man. The impact of this release can't be understated, as it was groundbreaking for its use of iris, a note more commonly found in women's fragrances. This iris was blended with leather, cacao, and amber, and this powdery iris gave it an elegant, almost dandy-like sophistication, like a dandy boy. And it had an impact. It was celebrated for redefining men's fragrances by moving away from the typical fresh or woody scent profiles to something more refined and daring. I'm going to do an honorable mention in 2007 because we actually did get a Cologne version of this, and the only reason I mention this is because of the continuity that it gives to the Dior Homme line. This is the Dior Homme Cologne from 2007. It is a silver stem cologne. It does not smell like any of the other colognes that have come after it. It smells very, very similar to this, except with a little bit more florals. It does wear a little bit lighter as well. But what really happened that was important in 2007 is that we got this, Dior Homme Intense, which was a richer, deeper, and more concentrated version of the original. And this was loved for its smooth, sensual profile, making it a perfect scent for evening wear for the colder weather, and a very, very date night friendly fragrance. Now fast forward to 2008 and we get this mini movie called Un Rendezvous, which is directed by Guy Ritchie and starring Jude Law, who is now the face of the Dior Homme line. Now in this mini movie, Jude is having a conversation where you think he's talking to another guy who he wants to fight, but as the movie goes on, you soon realize your thoughts of a tough guy have been subverted, and all that machismo-laden dialogue he was using were all double entendres, because he was talking to a woman who he is planning to rendezvous with and probably bang. But he will bang her very elegantly and in a sophisticated manner, because that is aligning with Dior Homme's image. So that character was the Dior Homme. Someone who sounds like he can kick your ass, but he'll end up banging your woman. Elegantly. In 2011, we had new versions of both fragrances, both of the Dior Homme fragrances and Dior Homme Intense as well. The Dior Homme went from the silver stem to this black stemmed version that we know of today. But I think they were done impeccably so as not to change the essence of the scent. These reformulations were not cried over because they smelled identical to their predecessors, pretty much. And that's because the Dior Homme had not changed. Jude Law was still the Dior Homme. Then in 2013, something happened. Dior announced that Robert Pattinson from those vampire lover movies was the new face of the Dior Homme line. The advertisement sees him shadow boxing and dancing and singing and protecting his woman from thugs in an alley, and of course, banging his woman. Though this time the Dior Homme is a little more energetic, less reserved, more childlike, less mature, more modern and edgy. Interesting. Also, Pattinson's 14 years younger than Jude Law, and in these adverts he looks very young indeed. And then in 2014 we got the first Dior Homme Parfum, which Pattinson was the face of also. And yeah, I think this can be a vampire's signature scent for sure. Now here's a tidbit. Going back a little bit in my channel's video history, I did do a review early on in my channel's life. I described Dior Homme Parfum as a person, and it went like this. Dior Homme Parfum. Imagine you're in a relationship with someone. Every time you meet, it's like a transcendental experience. You feel as though you're on a higher plane of existence, that you often find yourself feeling like you're having an out-of-body experience. Your time together is never sharply focused. It's blurry, but not like a drunk blurry, more like a soft bokeh. This relationship is la dolce vita. This relationship is one you look forward to, but there's a feeling of confusion because this is a relationship with someone whose name you still don't know, are too afraid to ask, and you've convinced yourself that it doesn't really bother you at all. And you're happy to keep doing the thing that you're doing because it's the most beautiful escapism that you've ever known. Fair warning, it is addictive though, because the high you get is followed long after, because it lasts a long time. Long after the high, you get this feeling of emptiness, where you question if you're even good enough to be in this relationship. Your entire thoughts become devoted to it, so much so that you can barely manage to think about anything else. Your world becomes a melange of self-deprecating pity and longing, which makes you utterly miserable, leading you to seek an escape. And since your ego has been self-harmed into almost non-existence, you have no shame. And so you end up reaching for it again. What are you going to do? So that's how I described Dior Homme Parfum in that video. You're welcome to watch it. I'll leave a link to it somewhere. Probably not, because it was a bit embarrassing. But since Pattinson took over, there's been no official change-up of the Dior Homme, but we have seen their runway shows evolve. Now, Dior is a designer house after all, so there should be a connection or some sort of common thread within their products that ties everything together to give its customers a consistency of experience, so that one knows, ah yes, this is a Dior. And speaking of Dior, I think it's time we unbox the thing, right? Now, I've been watching other channels do their unboxing as well, and I don't know, that's not bad, I guess. It is a Dior cardboard box. Alright, there you go, there's the box. I'm sure you've seen it many times already in other people's videos, but nicely done with the paper here as well. Let's open it up. I ordered with it a few samples. I did get J'adore, but this is J'adore L'Or Essence de Parfum. It is a, well, it's a version of J'adore. Let's see. I did like J'adore. I do like that particular fragrance, the original anyway. So I got that, and I have a carded sample of the Parfum. Inside it looks like like this. How many mil do they give you? Because I know that some niche brands give you 2 or 3 mils sometimes. This is a 1 mil, so it's a 1 mil sample. It should do with for like a couple of wearings, or maybe even 3 or 4 wearings, because this stuff is actually quite strong. And there's the box itself. And I suppose I have to do it because everybody else is doing it. All right, cool. Let's open it up. Let's open it up. Like so. Dior's packaging has not been the greatest. It never has been the greatest. It's been very simple. No mess, no fuss. Okay, so there it is, Dior Homme. This is the 75 ml that I got, comparing it to the other one, which had a lot more glass in it. All right, there we go. And atomizer. It's good. So I've shown you what the Dior Hommes look like, how they behaved, what characteristics they displayed, and how they evolved over the years. Are you a Dior Homme? You may very well be. Or you may have been a Dior Homme at some stage. But now you're not, because a lot of things change in 20 years. I mean, that woman Jude Law banged elegantly, she probably got pregnant and popped out 2 kids. I bet they're not banging now under the Eiffel Tower, and he's no longer a Dior Homme. He's a dad, at home, and probably subscribed to my channel. But the most likely scenario is that you were never a Dior Homme. But you thought you were because you thought you could let a fragrance wear you, covering you like a fragrant cloak of sophistication and elegance. You wore the Dior Homme like a persona, and over the years, you've let the persona subsume your person. And that's why when the cloak changes, it changes the very fiber of your being. Wow, that was a bit weird. I got totally arty-farty there. Let's tackle the topic of Dior Homme Parfum apparently copying other fragrances like from Armani or Givenchy and stuff like that. The use of that lipsticky makeup iris in men's perfumery was pioneered and cemented by the original Dior Homme in 2005. Once men started to gravitate towards the Dior Homme line of fragrances, other designers took note and released their own take. Valentino had a go, Prada, Givenchy, etc. And they also released flankers aplenty, whilst the Dior Homme line stood kind of still, like it had nothing to prove. And now they made their next move in their own time, because it was time to make that move. It reminds me of the story of the lion in the jungle, who was like sleeping and just laying about doing nothing, whilst all the animals slowly started to realize that he's not really doing anything anymore. He's not patrolling, he's not being the king here anymore. And so they proceeded to go absolutely apeshit, excuse the pun, and completely run amok in the jungle, thinking that the lion won't do shit, until he did, and proceeded to rip all the troublemaking animals limb from limb, and in doing so reminded everyone why he's the king of the jungle. Those other animals thought they were him, but they were just pretenders. So to turn around to say that line that the OG, the one who started it all to begin with, is the copycat is beyond ridiculous. It's like the time that Chinese company reverse engineered a tech product and then they built it themselves and then they went ahead and sued the original company for copying their design. Like I said, ridiculous. And you know what's not ridiculous? Business. As in, it's not personal, it's just business. I always get a laugh when people get routinely surprised by things acting exactly the way they're supposed to act. We shouldn't get surprised about politicians lying, cheaters cheating, narcissists being on TikTok, Aventus's latest batch being shit canned, then like clockwork, 3 years later it's heralded as God's juice. We shouldn't be surprised by these things because they're so predictable, but we are, and hence the visceral reaction to the new Dior Homme Parfum. Dior is a business, and believe it or not, they're not in the business of shooting themselves in the foot. They know what sells, and that's what they put into a bottle. You know what people said when the original Dior Homme was released in 2005? Let's read some comments from some reviewers, okay? Oh, one person says, "Not my cup of tea." Someone else said, "The leather in this makes my husband smell like a grease ball." Someone else said, "It's too powdery and feminine. I don't want to smell like a woman's purse." That was a very common review of the Iris when it came out. People just weren't ready for it and they just haven't become acclimatized to it. Here's someone that gave a pretty damning review. It said, this person said, "It smells like chocolate chip cookie dough, sugar and lipstick. It smells so sweet that it actually makes my teeth hurt. Also, it has the sillage and power and longevity of skunk musk. I've actually smelled this scent from 50 feet away on a windy day. Trying this on was the single worst scent experience I've ever had, and I do not understand why people like a scent like this, which I can only easily describe as absurdly offensive." This is what he was talking about. I guess these naysayers were objectively wrong given the success of Dior Homme over the past 20 years. The other part of this ridiculousness is the hommes. I mean, men. The men who have been very vocal about shit-canning Dior Homme Parfum, a fragrance which is in a parfum concentration, so it will need time to mature, just like the previous versions of Dior Homme Parfum. It took my bottle like almost half a year to actually come good after I first sprayed it and let air into the bottle. These men who are supposed to be fragrance aficionados, and yet they still make judgments based on a first impression. Is this amateur week? And men, well, I assume they're men because they look like men, but they sound like whiny, sniveling little bitches who act like Dior owes them something. Just because you bought a few glass containers with volatile aroma chemicals inside it doesn't make you Bernard Arnault. So please, stop it and get some help. Mike?
Stop it. Get some help.
And grow a pair. The other part of this that I cannot fathom is the original Dior Homme Parfum, which is an absolute beast of a fragrance. Quite possibly the best designer fragrance of all time, but you are insane if you think you can wear this as a signature scent. Unless you live somewhere that's constantly cold all the time, like your mother's basement. And you are insane if you think that you need to overspray this. 2 sprays are plenty. I've been through a total of about 30 mLs in the past 5 years of Dior Homme Parfum. This is my second bottle. I sold my first one because with the number of fragrances that I have, there's no way I'll even finish just this bottle, so I don't need a second one. So it befuddles me to no end when I see grown men with hundreds, sometimes thousands of fragrances apparently getting backups of it. Expect to see these being sold for the millions of dollars on eBay in a few years' time. And whilst this may be quite possibly the greatest designer fragrance of all time, it is very linear. It's complex, right? It undulates, it ebbs and flows through notes but it's linear. And add to that the immense longevity that it has, it gets tiring. By the 10th hour, I just want to wash this off. There, I said it. And to the people who simply don't understand why Dior had to change this up, just look at Dior Homme 2020, which is this one right here. There was a bit of an uproar when this came out as well. A new direction, no iris. It also got shit canned at first, but now its rating is just as high and with more votes than its predecessors before it. You know why? It's because the actual Dior Hommes love it. It's a compliment getter for sure. Is it game changing? Nope. Can you elegantly but energetically bang your woman with it on? Yup, and the same thing is going to happen to this new Dior Homme Parfum. And whilst I did mention the ratings there, I have to caveat and state that given Dior Homme Parfum smells a lot like Armani Code Parfum, which has a 4.39 out of 5 rating from over 4,000 votes, Dior Homme Parfum has a rating of 2.24 with over 500 votes as of the recording of this video. So if it smells like something a lot of people love the smell of, then why don't people love the smell of Dior Homme Parfum? Could it be that those reviews are based on feelings rather than objective critiques? Could it be that influencers are trying to cash in on the attention economy by doing complaining porn? Could it be that those complainers are just a vocal minority? And could it be that the majority just love this fragrance? Nah, must just be my imagination. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go do something elegantly.